Hey, welcome to our Winzertalk. Um, my name is Mick Schulz. I work in marketing for Kölner Weinkeller. I'll be the host tonight for our talk with Luisa Rocca from the winery of named after her father, Bruno Rocca. And we're going to talk about Barbaresco, about the history of the winery, and yeah, we're going to taste some wines afterwards. But first, Luisa, maybe you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, ciao everyone. My name is Luisa and I'm from Barbaresco. So I'm representing a family estate. So the winery is called Bruno Rocca. So Bruno is my dad. And he started the company on his own because actually we are a family from Barbaresco, recognized us from the municipality of Barbaresco at least from the beginning of the 1800s. As a farmer, but we never put the family name on our wines, and we never bottled the wines in the past. It was Bruno who started at the end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s. So if you consider that today Barbaresco is a teeny village of 660 some people, back in the past it was even smaller. So it was basically a farm place, and as it is today. So we don't have any industry or any like big offices or nothing. It's a country village. So actually the history it started at the end of the 70s, just after my grandfather passed away. Because is it true that today we know Barolo and Barbaresco as a wine well known all over the world, but actually the history it started they're pretty young. So beside Barolo, that was the king already visiting Barolo, making wines in Fontana Fredda, so a very long time ago history. Barbaresco started just at the end of the 1890s. After Domizio Cavazza, which is still today considered the father of Barbaresco. So, but then we always been recognized as the redneck cousin of Barolo. But making our job, working serious in our lands, putting all our efforts on working the vineyards and growing our grapes and making our wines and spreading the word around the world. Today we are still the cousin, but not more the redneck cousin. So day by day we are conquering our position in the world, in the wine words. So basically the history of Barbaresco in terms of production, it starts in a serious way at the 80s, beginning of the 90s. I mean, where most of the winery, like family winery, like mine, were born. So that was more or less the age. So when my father Bruno told to my grandfather that he wanted to be a farmer, he wanted to make wines, my grandfather said, "Are you crazy? Working in the vineyard? So no, please, you have to study. You have to study, and you can study. You can decide if you want to become a doctor, so go for medicine, or if you want to go for and work in a bank, so doing counting." And so Bruno was feeling better with the numbers than the pills, so he decided to do counting, and he found his job at the Ferrero industry. So everybody knows Nutella, Ferrero Rocher. So Papa was part of the office of public relation at the Ferrero industry for a very long time, actually up to the 90s. So for a very long time he was doing wine and working at the office, at the Ferrero office. This was very important because we are not a rich family. So we didn't inherit any cellars or history of wine. So it was Bruno who started in the 78. So we need the money. We need the money to build a little cellar where to make little wines. We needed money to buy devices, to bottling the wines, to buying a tractor to harvest and to do all the jobs. So The Ferrero industry, it was a very good part to getting some money to reinvest on what it was his real passion. So still at the beginning, imagining that the first Bruno bottle was from the 78, but don't tell Bruno, it was pretty undrinkable. It was at the beginning, so you need to learn, you need to study, because he was very trained about how to grow grapes, because he learned from my grandfather, from his grandfather, and so on. So very well known about how to grow grapes, but nothing about how to transform it. So at the beginning, he says, okay, if I go to my friends in Barolo, since they are the cool guys, they will never tell me the secrets about how to make wines. So he thought that, and he thinks that still today, that Pinot Noir as a varietal, as the connection the varietal it has with the terroir, it could be kind of similarity with the Nebbiolo from this area. So he took his car and he went to Burgundy on visiting growers from Burgundy. And in one of his trips, he met the tonnelier of La Romane Conti, and he came back with the 2 Barrique on the back of his car. And so he started on experimenting. So from the 78, we can say that the first drinkable bottles were from 82. So it took a couple of years, but he found his way pretty soon. So since it was the beginning, he was selling all his production, and actually he was also keep selling a lot of grapes before to invest all his production, all his harvest to make a wine that he didn't know if it was sold or not. So he was keep selling the grapes, and he was one of we was part of the Produttori del Barbaresco, which still today is, I guess, one of the best cooperative wineries we have, I would say, in Europe, but in Italy for sure. Step by step, he built the winery, he bought some new lands, and then he resigned from Produttori del Barbaresco to make wines just on his own. And he's also quit from Ferrero industry to walk with his own legs. It was not easy, but and actually I can tell you a secret. When he was working for the Ferrero, he was getting a lot of money. But he always keeps saying that he didn't care about the money he was getting, because he was not happy behind the desk. He was much happy in the vineyard, in his lands, and doing what he was doing. And if we think that it was the 80s, and it was like a very hard decision to take, but he follows his passion, and me and my brother definitely keep saying thanks to him for taking this decision today. So pretty happy about that.
I think it's very interesting what you were saying, that he had to build the cellar, he had to find a way to make the wine. But the most important thing you already had, right? You already had the land, or you already had a lot of land, at least, maybe not all the land that you have now, but you had great vineyards, which, like your grandfather has already planted the vineyard, or he hasn't planted, but he has bought the vineyards. So the basis for everything was already there. You just needed to find a way to translate this into a bottle, which I think is very interesting to come from a family that, like you said, you aren't rich, but then again, you owned like that land that is valuable, maybe not money wise, but valuable from the perspective of wine culture. Say those were old vineyards, and I think it's very interesting how you had to find a way to transform those vineyards, or the wine that was grown there, into wine. And how do you say, like, the Produttori del Barbaresco is probably a more traditional way. And did Bruno go into like, did he have a rebel phase where he was like, I'm going to do everything much in a different way than the produttori are doing and than like the old guys in town are doing?
Yeah, I mean, he was trying to find his own way. So as back at the time, I don't think he was. I don't think he was thinking I have to do different things. I have to be. He always found his way to. I want this to be expressed in my wine. So how I can reach that kind of expression instead of produttori does like this, I want to do a completely another way. So it was a different kind of research, and definitely you are completely right. We inherit from my grandfather the Rabaya vineyard. We inherit the Rabaya and the Trifolera vineyard, so the Barbaresco vineyard and the Dolcetto vineyard that was replanted by my grandfather in the 74. So still today we have a very old vines, and it was really blessed to have the Rabaya. And this is definitely tell the character of my grandfather. Because back in the time, he was owning 2 other vineyards in Barbaresco. And he was living in the center of Barbaresco, just nearby the church. So then he discovered that there was this vineyard, Rabaya, in Cell. And everybody were looking at Rabaya as like the best place where to grow Nebbiolo grapes. But the thing is that Rabaya 1 kilometer, even like living in no man's lands. Because imagine a place where it snows very much in the winter time. It's pretty foggy in the fall. Summer is very hot. When they moved to Rabaya, we are talking about the end of the 50s. My father always tells me that the first month they were out without the lights, the lights, no electricity, because it was not connected with the center. So, but the idea of my grandfather was, I have to get up every day and I have to work hard in my lands. So if I have a great vineyard, I have the chance to grow excellent grape, and I will quite sure that after the harvest, I'm gonna sell it, the grapes. If I don't have an excellent vineyard, I still have to wake up every day and I still have to work hard in my lands. But at the end of the year, I'm not sure I can grow excellent grapes, so I'm not sure I can sell it. So his vision was to have the best lands ever. Mm-hmm. So that was a very good view from my grandfather. So yeah.
Yeah. And why did your grandfather actually, because I forgot that I wanted to ask this question, why did your grandfather discourage your father from being a winemaker, from making his own wine? Like you said,
he didn't want it. He didn't want it because many reasons. One, it was because my father is the only child. And my grandmama was from the 1909. My father is from the 51. So if you can make a count, it was not the kids that they wanted. It was the kids who arrived. Yeah. So basically, my father parents were quite the same age of the grandfather of his classmates.
Yeah.
And then they make this decision when my father was 8 to 9 years old to move 1 kilometer far from the village. So the risk that he was tagged as a redneck, he was behind the corner. So my parents were very, very careful that he has his own way, that he can express his personality and not to be tagged. So having a kids working in the lands, it could also be meant back in the days, not today, that he was like a donkey, not a smart guy. Plus, all parents, plus living as only kids 1 kilometer in a place where no other kids, the closest kids was 1 kilometer. They wanted him to have like a proper study and to have a position in his life. And so that's why my grandfather didn't want it for Bruno to take the path of the winemaking.
Okay.
Considering that at that time, the winemakers in the area were very few. More in Barolo. Barbaresco, pretty few. Still, Angelo Gaia was still having the osteria in Barbaresco, and he was making the wines for his osteria in the 60s, 70s. So we are talking about really the beginning. There was Pio Cesare, but was already in Alba. And Ceretto, and I mean the big names, all know, but the proper winemakers in Barbaresco, there were few. There were more people that were growing grapes. Yeah.
I think it's psychologically very interesting to hear how your father has grown up and how he has then, of course, maybe stubbornly decided to be a winemaker anyway. And how he decided to find his own way that sort of all plays into like it fits, like with being an only child, with growing up so far away, that he wanted to find his own way sort of makes sense. But maybe we can follow this line to the present day. If you would describe what is the philosophy, what is the way that the wines are made today, how would you do that?
Yeah, so we are pretty lucky because me and my brother always breathed the passion of this job. So when we were at the age where you have to decide what to do in your life, we have no other, we didn't have no other option. We have no other idea about to follow our parents' path, since we saw all this love and passion that we grew up in that. So we were harvesting. So today we can call slight gentle slavery when we were kids, but we were helping a lot on doing harvest, or my parents were living for the vineyard, for the cellar. So we grew up with this passion too. So it is still today a really strong point of our philosophy, which means that is the love of the terroir and of our job and on our winemaking. So today the philosophy is still to bring in the glass what is the best from each vintage as well. So basically, if you look at our company and our winery, it's still a family winery. So it's still Bruno with my brother. They take care of the vineyards and lands and winemaking. So we don't have any consultant from outside. So we don't have any winemaker. The winemaker is my brother. And everything we produce is come from our own property lands. So we do have 15 hectares of lands, all between Barbaresco and Neue. So we can say that in a range of 3-4 kilometers, we have all our property. And we mainly grow and make Nebbiolo. So if you look at our list, we have 6 different Barbaresco, 1 Langhe Nebbiolo. So basically we have 7 labels, 100% Nebbiolo. Then of course we make some Barbera, a little bit of Dolcetto, 3,000 bottles of Chardonnay, but our focus is on Nebbiolo. And this is because Nebbiolo, it's a varieties that is completely connected with the place where it grows. So the idea is to get all the best from each single plot we have and to get it expressed, but completely respecting the terroir, the varietals, and the identity, the vintage. So we want to make wines with an identity. This is what we want. Of course, it's up to our taste, our expression, because so it's always our signature on that. But it's mainly the soil, the varietals, and the vintage that has to be expressed in the glass, not the winemaker style. So that's why we think that our job is to lead the vineyard according to the weather, according to what is the atmosphere around, and then the grapes will lead to become a wine without transforming it, just leading to the transformation.
And that's kind of like a philosophy that many say terroir-oriented wineries have, and they would say probably the similar things. But I always think it's interesting to see what people do in order to achieve this goal. So what can you tell me about that?
So first of all is the respect of the terroir, of the soil. So avoiding the use of chemical as much as we can. So we don't like to be tagged, we don't like to be certified, not because we're not interested to, but respecting the terroir is the only way to make Nebbiolo in Barbaresco, we think. So has to be certified for something that should be normal. For us, it's a little bit absurd. So first of all, it's the respect of the territory. So we just use sulfur and copper, and also the sulfur we buy, it's from the Ceva of the south of Italy instead of the refined sulfide sulfur, and we produce our own compost, our own humus. It's homemade. We do, I mean, everything we can. It's manual and it's homemade. So this is also the reason why we want to keep smaller. We want to be have also a small property. The other thing, it's very important, is that sometimes we think that harvest it represents vintage, but actually is not. We have to think that every single step we do in our lands, in our vineyard, starting from the first cut in pruning until the harvest time, every single action, every single step you do to lead your grape, your plants, this it will be a translation in the final result, so on your harvest, and so it will be a translation in your wines. So this is it's very, very important way of thinking about the winemaking. It's not just the harvest. It's every single step that you do during the year that make a difference. And because we have always to remember that a vines, a grape, a plants, a vines, it doesn't care to make good wines. The mission of the plants, naturally speaking, is to ripe the last berries of the last bunches. That is the plant mission. So it's our mission to guide, to lead the plants to give all its best according to what is the vintage, what is the climate, what is the forecast. So this is it's very important because you do this during the year, and this is the amazing thing about the wines and the wine world.
I always think about like the way that that people work with the wines. It's a little bit like torture, you know, like you put the wine, like the best plots are the ones with like the worst soil in a way, like the soil that drains a lot, or soil that is not, that you probably wouldn't plant anything else there. It's like, okay, we're going to plant vines here because vines are super robust, and they bring fruit, even though this land is not like top agricultural land. And in a way, you make the plant suffer in order to get better wine, which is like my way of thinking about it. But what you were saying sounded much more like you talk about leading, so it sounded much softer and much more maybe understanding in a way of the plant.
Yeah, there are many ways to think about this. So this is what is our philosophy, what is our vision in the agriculture, and this is what is our mission in the year. So we invested in that land, so definitely we want to make sure that everything goes at its best to make our wines, to make the grapes to represent us and the territory, for sure. So I cannot speak for all the words or other territory where they are maybe a little bit more unlucky compared to Barolo and Barbaresco, where the soil is so blessed that can grow this Nebbiolo in this amazing way. So we are just lucky. So that's why I said we have just to protect and to defend our territory, because it always keeps its promise.
Right. It's also interesting that Nebbiolo is like one of the few grapes, like you mentioned Pinot Noir, which is like widely exported and grown more or less everywhere in the world, to less, maybe not the quality that you find may differ, but you can grow it anywhere. While Nebbiolo is basically just there. Which I think,
Piemonte, Valtellina.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you can go a little bit farther north, but that's more or less it. Like you don't grow it anywhere else, and I think that's really interesting about the
That's why we have to protect it.
Yeah,
we have to protect it.
Right. It's a heritage.
Exactly.
I've read somewhere that you guys have like a small vineyard where you conserve like the different clones that you use.
See, my brother made a Massal selection. He started on our Nonno vineyard, because it's the only one we had some records, because it was planted by my grandfather. So we had also some records in terms of clone. And he made this Massal selection. So he selected, he identified. Now it's arriving at almost 80s, because then he spread to all our property. But when he started from Rabaya, in Rabaya was, I guess, 34 or 36 different kind of clones that he made a draft. And so we built this, we call it the experimental vineyard, where we have our clones growing. So every time we need to replant, we can use the original clone, and we can keep these old clones with to live. So we can recreate these multi-clonal areas.
Right. Is there like, did you notice many differences? Is there like one of the clones like super good and the other ones not as much?
They're all good. They're all good. They have a different expression. They have a different characteristic. So Lampia is the most common, the most used. And then we have Miche, which is the other very common clones. So those are the two which gives more balanced wines. While there is also a third clone called Rosé. and it gives a little bit more of acidity. It's a little bit more nervous as a clone. And it was used to cut the other two varietals. So if you look at all the vineyards, you have a big percent of Lampia, and then you have a little bit, but less than Lampia of Miche, and a few little portion of Rosé. So coming from that, I tell you, I don't know if I can tell you, but I tell you, my brother start this new project of a rosé wine using the clones, bringing back the clones of rosé, 100% Nebbiolo, and it will be presented in a month or two because we just harvested.
Breaking news.
So breaking news. Sorry, maybe I shouldn't say. I don't know. We are still thinking about it.
Too late. We're live.
So this is also to explain, not to explain, but to.
Sorry, it's only called rosé. It doesn't make a rosé wine. It's just
rosé is the name of the clones, which tends to have wines with a little bit less color.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's
still a red wine.
And a little bit higher acidity.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's perfect to make a kind of rosé wine.
Yeah, yeah.
We cannot call it rosé because it's forbidden.
Mm-hmm,
From the Langhe DOC is not forbidden, maybe rosato, but still we are thinking about all of this. So, but this is to also to explain behind my brother what it passed in his brain. Every single thing, it's about how I can have my territory and my root expressed.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's a family. So we are not genius, we are not magician, but it's a genuine way to love our territory and our varietals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like that sentiment.
Yeah.
Shall we go on to taste the first wine?
Yes. Dolcetto.
Which is the Dolcetto Trifole?
Trifole, yes.
Yeah.
Which comes from the vineyard Trifole.
Mm-hmm.
And Trifolera vineyard, it's actually bordering with the Rabaya vineyard. So we are talking about a very important area in the Barbaresco scenario. And this is it's part that we inherit from my grandfather. So the vineyard was replanted by him. So the average age it's from the 74, 1974. So we have very old plants. One funny thing is that we are still keeping Dolcetto Trifole because when my grandfather bought this vineyard was on the Trifolera vineyard. But in the 2008, when the Consorzio decided to recognize the MGA, so the Menzioni Grafiche Aggiuntive, so the CRU, the single vineyard, they need to trace some borders and allowing the winemakers who were making wines, even though that plot has no name. So to include some colleagues, they traced the border of Rabaya and they included our Dolcetto in the Rabaya vineyard. So if you look at the Albo Vigneti, you will see that Rabaya, it's 15.26 hectare big. 97% is planted as Nebbiolo, and 3% is it's Dolcetto, which is ours. So it's coming from the Rabaya, but it was from Trifolera, so we want to keep calling Trifole. Talking about the varietals, Dolcetto is a pop varietal. It was used best back in the time to taking aspirin as a daily drink. Because first of all, it's a varietals that can become a wine pretty fast. It has a very short time of vinification, and so my grandfather was harvesting in September, and then in November it was ready as a wine. Of course, it was a wine, but it was mostly a beverage, like a drink. Not without this alcohol, this complexity. It was more a drink, and they were picking the dolcetto because dolcetto, it has this juiciness. If you taste it, it's very juicy. It reminds the juice of the grapes when you press it. Plus, the dolcetto as a varieties contain tannins, not as Nebbiolo, a little bit less, but the tannins are very helpful for digestion. So back in the day, living in the countryside where you cannot get your Pellegrino in the refrigerator or the tap water, having like a drink, it was important. So they were using dolcetto. So we want to keep the same idea, of course, thinking about a wine, but we want to keep this juiciness, this approachability with these tannins that remains on the aftertaste when you taste it, when you swallow. And it's a daily wine. It's very easy to pair. For example, it's my wine for pizza. I'm not too much into beer. Sorry for Germans, but I'm not too much into beer. So this is my wine for pizza. And in the summertime, you put in a glacé, you chill out of a couple of degrees. It could be also very good red wine, fresh red wines. So it's very, very simple drink. Just stainless steel, no hook. And the secret is this crispiness, this aromaticity you can get from the dolcetto. It's because the 30% of this wine, it's fermented with the full bunches. So with the grass.
Yeah.
Just the 30%. So vinification is very short and just stainless steel, and it's harvested in September and it's bottled in May around. Yeah.
Like I told you before, that this is like one of my favorite wines that we have at Kölner Weinkeller, because it's simple in a way. It's not overly complicated, but at the same time it's elegant. You know, it's like it doesn't have any of the in a way, if you think of wines that are simple, that are like everyday drinkers, sometimes you have to sacrifice some of the elegance. And this is like a super elegant wine. You can drink it for like lots of food. You can also drink it alone, which is like something that Italians don't like to hear, but us as Germans, we often do that.
I do that.
And with this one,
watching series, TV series, Netflix.
Yeah, exactly. This is the perfect Netflix.
And Bruno does it too when he watch soccer.
Oh yeah.
He loves Toro as a team, Torino.
Okay.
It's the other side of Juventus, Torino. And when he watched Torino, and he like to drink and chips. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see myself drinking this and watching a Cologne game.
Yeah. I'm pouring Nebbiolo, sorry.
Not that far away.
Yeah, and then also if you guys have any questions, please. They are not silly questions. They are not stupid questions. They are all very important. And if you have any curiosity, please feel free. Sorry, Michael.
Don't worry. Something that I think is interesting now that it's from 2019. So for a dolcetto, which is probably meant to be drunk younger, it's a little bit on the well, not on the older side, but you know, it's already forwarded a bit more than what I would usually have it. Like I would probably usually have it like 2 years old, or maybe even the next year. And it's really interesting how it evolved into this. Like there is a sort of complexity there that I wasn't expecting. Actually, it's more it's not as fruity, not as fruit forward as I was expecting. It's more like it has this chalky tannin structure, you know, like so that's very interesting. And it's actually like with this age, it calls more for food. than for football.
See, it's definitely a gastronomic wine, the Dolcetto.
Yeah.
And answering your question, I don't know if it was a question, but
Answer it anyway.
sorry. That is the drinkability. It's one of our characteristic. We like the wines that are drinkable, because drinkability, it doesn't mean that the wines cannot age. Potential of aging is given by acidity, structure, tannins, and wine characteristic. If a wine is not drinkable, it's not drinkable, neither if it's old.
Yeah.
So we like to make wines with a very good drinkability.
Right.
This is what we want when we do ferment, when we do make our wines.
Shall we move on to the next one?
Of course.
Fralu, which is half of your name.
You got it. Okay, so Fralu, it's Langhe Nebbiolo. It's 100% Nebbiolo grape, and it's made with all our young Nebbiolo vines. As I said before, we are basically Nebbiolo growers, and we make a lot of Barbaresco wines. So when we have a younger vines, where the average age is between 4 up to 8 to 10 years old, that vineyard are harvested and vinified as Langhe. This is because since we make 6 labels of Barbaresco, we want that the territory is expressed. So a Nebbiolo plants, when you plant it, the root need 6, 8 years, depends on the kind of soil, to reach the right deepness in the soil to get what is the essential of the territory. So that's why we think it's a little bit too early. There is no rules to say that to make Barbaresco, the plants has to be to a certain average age. It's completely our decision. So just to give you an example, we replanted in the 2013 6 lines in the Rabaya vineyard. Rabaya, you know, it's one of our most iconic vineyard, the most important in our property. And one journalist once asked Bruno, why you have 6 lines of Rabaya vines and you use it to make Nebbiolo? And there is no rules to have an average age on plants. And Bruno says that it's like to give to a 18 years old boy a Ferrari keys. Is it true that he has the drive license, but he doesn't have the experience to drive yet? So let's make Langhe Nebbiolo, and then when the roots have reached the right deepness in the soil, we are going to use it for Rabaya. So that's why Langhe, it's made with all our younger vines, and it's not a baby Barbaresco. It's not a part that is, it doesn't convince us or else. It's actually the first harvest we do, talking about Nebbiolo, because you know that when the bunches comes up, when the berries start to be green, they have more acidity in it. While they are maturing, then the acidity goes low. So we harvest as a first, so we can get a little bit more of the acidity. Acidity is also the things that makes your mouth to produce saliva, and so makes the wines to be a little bit more fresh. So that's what we want. A Nebbiolo translated in a fresh words, fresh idea. So it has to be the fresh expression of Nebbiolo. So that's why younger vines harvested a little bit earlier compared to the grapes that we harvest for Barbaresco. Vinification takes place in stainless steel. Here the maturation arrive up to the 20 days more or less, and it's 1 year in Barrique. Only used oak. So 3rd, 4th, 5th years old Barrique, not new oak, because for us, the wood in general, it's considered as a device, not as an ingredient. So this is also very important.
So it's basically neutral. The oak in this. It doesn't even.
You can taste it because it passed in oak, but it's not an ingredient. It's not one of the characteristics that it pops up.
Yeah. I love how fragrant it is. It's like super explosive on the nose. Well, not explosive, but it's like super charming and fragrant on the nose. It's almost like smelling a perfume or something. So it's really, really lovely. I haven't tasted it yet, but
in the 19th, because of the characteristic of the vintage, I like this expression of freshness, like mint, eucalyptum. It has this freshness, vertical notes that I like. But it's my wine, so of course I like it.
Oh yeah, and it's like super fresh. It's super energetic still. It's a little bit like the 18-year-old driving the Ferrari. You know, it's like very.
It's like a young guy on his teenage. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, you can see this wine on the dance floor. You know.
Exactly. Crying at the discotheque.
Yes. Super nice. It's lovely. You know, it's like very, very charming, I think.
Yeah. Then Nebbiolo, it's also the wines that we use for our tables. When you don't know what to open, you open a Nebbiolo or you open a Barbera. I mean, in our mentality, in our culture.
Right.
So yeah.
This would pair super well with meat of any kind, I guess, and especially like now with if you think of autumn kitchen, I can totally see this with like mushroomy dishes, with gamey dishes. There's a lot you can do.
And the famous vitello tonnato.
Oh yeah, it's an acquired taste that I've never acquired for some reason. I know everybody loves it, but I'll be the odd one out there. But yeah, I can totally see how that would work super well with that.
Also, if you do barbecue, with a steak.
Yeah, right.
That's the perfect glass while you are turning your steak on your barbecue.
It's already raining outside. I'm not thinking of barbecue at the moment. But yes,
that's true.
It's a good wine for a rainy day too. I think.
Guys, give me back June, and nobody will be hurt.
Oh yeah. I can take summer all year long.
Yeah.
You probably shouldn't say this in these in times of climate change, but still.
Yeah, no, that's true.
So moving on to the Barbaresco, which is probably going to be too young still. I mean, not like Barolo, but Barbaresco being like the prime expression of a Nebbiolo. It's basically the wine. Well, there's a couple of others too, but like it's one of the wines where you say, okay, this needs age, this needs time to settle down. At least that's the cliche. Maybe you have something to say against that, like you were saying that you guys are looking for.
No, it's nothing. No, absolutely not against. It's that nowadays wines, luckily, you can decide. You can decide when it's your perfect window where to open it, where to drink it. Except, for example, I'm the kind of person that when I open a bottle of Barbaresco, is because most of the time I'm having a meal, I'm having dinner, lunch, and I want to drink all the bottle. So, since for me, wines is sharing time with people, with food, with the thing. I like that the wines still has some acidity, tannins to be paired with the food, and then to have some freshness. So the acidity to make me enjoy in the glass, to have this evolution also in the glass, because a young wines, when you put your nose in the glass every time during the The lunch is a different story. It's gonna open up. It's a different thing. So I like this kind of experience because that's my favorite. So that's why my window is normally on the more younger Barolo, Barbaresco, because I like this kind of experience. But everybody, I mean, we are all different. So there are people that doesn't drink any Barbaresco before the 20 years old of age, which is perfect. So it's completely, at least we have a chance to decide.
Exactly, that's what I was going to say. Like you have a wine that can go the long distance, and you have the chance to actually decide that. I think like, to me at the moment, I've opened this maybe an hour before we started broadcasting, so it's almost 2 hours open now. It's still a little bit muted, but you can tell on the palate, like once it enters your mouth, you can tell how complex it is, how much there is going on. I'm going to be tasting this along the evening, like in little sips.
And tomorrow.
And tomorrow, yeah.
Tomorrow is gonna be a bomb, a little bomb.
Right.
We shouldn't say bomb online at this time of the year, but we will be banned.
Yeah, that's true. We're
talking about wines, guys. Don't worry.
It's just a metaphor.
Exactly. So this Barbaresco, it's made with all our small property. As I said, we inherited the Rabaya. We were lucky enough to make a good investment on buying a very good portion in Curra Vineyard, which is another amazing vineyard in Neve. Then all the others, we got the chance to buy property, beautiful property, but small territory, small
plots, I think. Yeah.
So this Barbaresco comes from Marcorino Vineyard, Fausoni Vineyard, San Cristoforo Vineyard, and a little piece of Curra Vineyard. They are all in Neve. And the important thing is that every single plot is harvested separately. When is the perfect time for that vineyard to be harvested? So respecting the ripeness. They are all vinified separately. So for doing this, we have a special tanks which works with always full technique. So we don't need to top up. So we can also make very, very small, we can call it micro vinification. And it's all the proceeds, it's done separately until the bottle. So we put all together before we bottle. We leave it, we keep it rest for a couple of weeks, and then we prepare for bottle. So with this, we want to get the best expression from each single plot. And so we have the vineyard, the soil and the terroir to better express all itself, because if Marcolino needs a couple of days more of maturation, while San Cristoforo was already, it's ready, we can respect the timing, and so we can get the best from each one, and then we blend all together for Barbaresco. So definitely with this label, we definitely can have the expression of the Barbaresco and the expression of the vintage.
Yeah.
So 19, it's a little bit cooler vintage, not so cool, but more cooler vintage. And this, in my opinion, it expresses the tannins with a very good crispiness and some tight. They're a little bit tight. But then at the back, we have a purity of expression in fruits, which comes from the back. So it's so big, but with the tannins so tight. And it's a vintage that I really like. So
yeah, it's very like I said, it's not so fragrant. It needs to open up a little bit more, but once you drink it, you can feel all that fruit and you can feel all that power.
Mm.
So yeah, it's really interesting. Would you say that the different crews that you have in the Barbaresco, are they all like, do they all steer in the same direction, or is it more like a balance of this one is maybe more powerful, this one is maybe more fresh?
It depends on the vintage.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Okay.
Depends on the vintage, but yes, every single plot it will bring a part of personality in it.
Yeah.
If we think about the Barolo and the Barbaresco of the beginnings, the best Barolo, the best Barbaresco were the ones made with multiple vineyards.
Yeah.
Because you can get a little bit from everywhere. Then, of course, we study, we put a lot of information. I mean, we learn how to lead our lands, and so now is the single vineyard considered the Barbaresco, the Barolo. But back in the time, this kind of putting things together, it was very, very good on making the Barbaresco and the Barolo what they are today.
Yeah. Yeah, in a way, it makes sense to make a blend of different plots and of different expressions in order to have like a maybe more constant, maybe more
Absolutely.
Yeah, I can't
And
find the
also
word,
the
but
expression
reliable.
of the vintage.
Yeah.
The expression of the vintage, because when you get more multiple sections, so with a different kind of microclimate in a certain way, you have the real expression of the vintage, the climate.
And also at least from what I know, Barbaresco, like the whole region, has very diverse soils. So there's like lots of different soil, like terroir soil. So you can,
but also different microclimate.
Also that. So so there's a lot of variety that you can find, that you can blend into a Barbaresco that is not a single cru Barbaresco.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I think both are very valid and almost like equal, not almost, but they're equal ways of making a wine. You know,
absolutely.
Like one
absolutely.
is like,
Imagining a world with only Reserva wines, how boring.
Yeah.
So,
not so much. Oh, what is that? Did someone start the Ferrari? There was
no, sorry, because I'm home and there is a street and maybe somebody with a very, very big car just passed. Sorry. I'm living in the cities. I live in Alba, so which is not a big cities, but it's different than Barbaresco. So
okay.
Yeah.
So Luisa, I think we have to wrap it up.
Yeah. I hope you had fun.
Very much. I hope you too. It was a
course.
pleasure to chat with you, to learn a bit more about Bruno Rocca, the winery, about the history of it all, and taste some wines with you, which was excellent. I hope that everybody out there that watched us drank along with us and tried some wines and found maybe some of the things that we were talking about.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And as a small family estate, I want to thank Kölner Wine Keller to bring our wines and to support us on what we do. So it's very, very important to have such value partners that represent our daily efforts around the Europe or the world. So thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. It really is.
Yeah, I really had a lot of fun. Now I'm gonna have my aperitivo.
Oh yeah. What's it gonna be?
I guess I'm gonna finish the Barbaresco.
Very good.
Or the Dolcetto. I'm sure. I have to check what is on my refrigerator for dinner. And I will decide.
I see. Okay, thank you a lot, Luisa.
Grazie. Thank you for watching, and thank you for being connected with me tonight, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Ciao. Cheers.